Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 179th Right and Left discussion forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today's panel will discuss critical race theory. What is it? What is its purpose? And why is it being taught now? Today's panel begins with Patty Haskins, member and current candidate for the Wadsworth City Council. Bryan Laubaugh, if he ever shows up, president of R&B Financial Services. Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist, and Joe Gaines, former member of the faculty of the University of Akron and Wadsworth High School. Patty, critical race theory has taken a foothold in high schools, universities, and in some parts of the government. What is it exactly, and why now after so many years of steady progress in race relations?
Well, first of all, critical race theory has been around for decades. It really came to be known in the 70s when it appeared that the Civil Rights Acts of the 60s had started to kind of just level off and nothing was being done. The principles of critical race theory were taken from writings and works of Sojourner Truth, W.E.D. Du Bois, Martin Luther King, and their purpose was to re-examine society through the lens of race and racial oppression. I think what seems to have happened recently is there appeared to be this leveling off, or the sensation or the idea that things have gotten better for people of color, so we don't need to do anything more. This was topped by the fact that in 2020, of course, had the 1619 Project come out, but then Trump had declared, and I think this was in September, that he was going to create the 1776 Commission to promote patriotic education, because the 1619 Project, he felt, did not. He also banned government contractors from conducting racial sensitivity or diversity training in the workplace because it was felt it was no longer needed. And he labeled any approach that acknowledges American racism or microaggressions and the like as dangerous, unpatriotic, and in his mind, racist. So I think from that, the idea of critical race theory was brought around. Now, please understand, critical race theory, the course, is not being taught anywhere. I actually went online and tried to find a course of study or a curriculum for it, and you can't find it. What's happened is aspects of it have popped up in various classrooms and so forth. Part of the reason they did so, and this is done, is because it was found that without this, that presently we're centering the white narrative and excludes people of color in some classes. It was found that there was a deficit-based approach to education for people of color. In other words, the assumption that those of color are automatically going to do worse than those that are of the white variety. There was also questioning of the discipline.
Do they do worse?
Well, that's the impression. And I think, one of the things I learned in education a long time ago is that students live up to their expectations or down to the expectations. So that if you do not expect more of students, they will actually work down to that level. So that is, I'm just telling you what the perception was. There's also the perception that discipline was much more commonly used for people of color in different methods. Also, funding. It was found that $23 billion more was spent on primarily white teaching at white schools as opposed to schools of color. And then steps that were taken and things that were thought to be good to be brought into the classroom were to change history teaching to acknowledge the oppression of millions due to race. And that, to me, that is one of the big ones, is that part of the complaints about critical race theory is that it actually teaches that in this country, we have oppressed people of color. And there are those that think that that should be overlooked because things are okay now, they're much better, so just ignore what happened in the past.
Can you,
Also,
can
what
can
has
you,
been suggested is to train teachers.
Patty, can you
Go
share
ahead.
with us how Blacks are being oppressed now?
A lot of it is not as overt as you might think, but it is there. For example, and I just saw, and actually Jim Rivers actually mentioned this one time long ago when he was on our program, and I just saw a program on this. Black hair care products. Sounds minor to you, but if you go into a drugstore or a large retail store to purchase Black hair care products, they're locked up in a cabinet, and you have to get a key from a manager or someone in the store to open them to purchase that bottle of shampoo. Now, for white hair care products, they're sitting out there ready for you to take whenever you want them. But Black hair care products, the assumption is that they're going to be stolen, obviously, are locked up.
Is that true? Is that true at the drugstores and supermarkets in Wadsworth?
Yes, it is.
It is?
It is. Now, we may not see it here because we may not have the need for those products, may not even be carried. I remember Jim saying he had to go into Akron to get his hair cut because there are not barbers in town that could cut his hair. But yes, it is very true.
I remember him
across the
saying that
country.
too, but when I moved to Akron and started going to the Ritzman pharmacy on Copley Road, I couldn't find white products.
Well, it's
because that's
I'm
where
just
the
telling you,
market
it does exist, and there are these things that sometimes we don't recognize. And again, we're caught up in that idea that things are okay, so we don't need to continue to look at this. I think other things that they needed to do is that we need to develop discipline so that Black and brown students are not disproportionately targeted. Also, we need to rethink how students are identified for advanced courses, accelerated programs, and elite colleges, and that people of color are looked at in the same manner. Now, I don't think any of those ideas is bad. I think all of them are good and have a fine purpose. I understand that there are those that deny the fact that possibly white privilege does exist, or think, I'm not racist. But there are many things perhaps that all of us have done in our lives that could be examined as prejudice because of our innate biases that we might have and may not even be aware of it. But the best way to deal with this, I think, is through education and to make people aware of situations, remind people of the past and what has happened so that we do not make those same mistakes as before, and to perhaps be able to better deal with this situation in the future. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Okay, well, Ron, what is your take? I can see you've got a look on your face right now like I can hardly wait to chime in on this topic.
Well, John, thank you for bringing up this subject. It's I think it's quite fascinating. For me, the concept that's come up in recent years about white supremacy has been very enlightening to me, because I think that I first would take no blame or responsibility for what my ancestors did, but that's not the point of white supremacy. The idea that there are systemic biases in society, I think, is quite clear. And looking back at, first of all, with the the housing things and back in the 60s and so on, and all that went on there. Even in Wadsworth, you can ask Jim about that.
Yeah.
Jim knows about that.
I know that story.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I meant.
Yeah, it
I
was
So-
carried in the Beacon Journal.
Yeah. So, okay. So as Patty just sort of said, there's certainly some good ideas in all of this. And I was brought up to believe that I have certain strengths and certain weaknesses. Certainly I'm strong academically, not a very good athlete in anything. And so, but I'm better in many things than some people and not as good in other people as some things in other people. But we all have equal rights under the law and equal rights in society, and we should work to make sure that happens. I can really identify with the idea of anti-racism, that it's out there, and I have to really look and try to make conscious decisions that I'm not making racist choices, and that I can try to hold my government responsible that it doesn't make racist decisions as well. And it's not an easy situation, and I certainly know that I've had some problems with certain classes of people in the past, and probably will continue to do so because we all have certain knee-jerk reactions to things that happen because of what our background and our thinking has been. And I think that's part of the definition of white supremacy, that it's there personally. Critical race theory says it's not so much that, but the structure of society, then the structure of culture that's bringing this out, and there are both of those in most of those in action here, I believe. So I find it difficult to take issue with most of this. I'm not sure about the concept that that equity is just Marxism, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. That just never worked, really.
But isn't that what the concept of equity is all about? That
No,
everyone,
it possibly true in some minds, but for me, equity is allowing equal opportunities. Not that we are all equal.
isn't that what equality is? Isn't there a difference between equality and equity?
Not in my mind. Not in my-
Okay, well, I think that in the critical race theory concept, that equality is everybody has the same opportunity. Equity means everybody should have the same outcome.
Well, I think if you say critical race theory is focused more on outcome than it is on individual responsibility, and for that part of it, I can't quite go along with that. But because I think society only happens on, as you fond of usually quoting Margaret Mead, that the only way that change ever occurs is for individuals to do the changing, whatever the words of that is. So it's an interesting and very complex situation, and I think we each have to take some measure of responsibility in making both equity and equivalence happen. So that's my jump in.
Joe, you've had a lot of experience in life. What are your thoughts?
On life?
Yeah, well,
My thoughts on life? Well, my thoughts are basically that I don't think anybody wants to come out and say that they're a racist. I don't think anybody believes they are racist, but I think we are. I think it
I
does
don't
come
know of
across.
anybody who knows what a racist is.
Well, you judge things by the race, by
If you're white, you're a racist.
no, not necessarily. However, I do believe that the whites are racists that don't know that they are, don't think that they are. I mean, look at the problems that are going on right now with the police departments, police forces, all throughout this country, not in one particular place. I mean, it's just unbelievable how blacks have been treated the beatings and the arrests and so on. Some are not justified whatsoever in the killings and everything. Is that racism? To me, it is.
What is it when, well, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You had a question.
No, when I think about the way blacks are treated, they're treated worse by other blacks. There are very few cases of white policemen actually killing unjustifiably black people. It doesn't happen. Of course it happens, but not very often.
Shouldn't happen at all.
Nothing compared to black on black crime. I've often wondered where is Black Lives Matter when it comes to blacks killing blacks by the hundreds, by the thousands.
I don't know about that number that you're quoting, but I will say that in many cases that blacks, I don't see that as a real issue. Blacks killing blacks. I think it's more of an economic issue. Poverty has a lot to do with it. I grew up in an institution with a father who basically had nothing. He had no money, no background. He could not read. He could not write. No education whatsoever. But he believed that everybody has a chance to get those things, and that you should get the opportunity. Maybe that's the word we're missing here, is the opportunity. And so he pushed for me to get the opportunity for an education. He pushed for me to get the opportunity to get things. And it worked.
Mhm.
But when it came to like racism itself, and it didn't like somebody because of their color, it was never a problem.
Okay, well, I have a problem. I have asked so many people what their definition of racism is. As a matter of fact, on West Exchange Street in Akron, there is the backside of the Our Lady of the Elms High School, and earlier this year and late last year, the entire length of the property was posted with a number of signs that said racism is sinful, period. That's what the sign said. So I called the woman that the nun at the Elms, who was responsible for putting the signs up, and I asked her this: can you give me your definition of racism? Now remember, she put these signs up saying racism is a sin. When I asked her for her definition of racism, she said, I never thought of that. Now I was astounded that she would put those signs up all along Exchange Street and never thought about what racism really is. But let me share another thought.
I don't think anybody ever thinks of that, do you?
Yes.
I don't think anybody ever thinks of what racism.
When somebody uses the term racism, I'm wondering.
I mean, I never thought of myself as a chauvinist.
Well, are you?
I just want to say, I never thought of myself as a chauvinist. Well, I've done things and said things that are chauvinistic, and it's been pointed out to me, not just by my wife either, but by other women. And I apologize for that. I certainly don't mean to be. I don't want to be. It's not my desire to be.
Well,
As a racist? No, I don't think I'm a racist.
we have less than a minute. I want to share a quote with you from a German economist by the name of Joseph Schumpeter. He said, "We fight for and against not men and things as they are, but for and against the caricatures we make of them." I want you to think about that for a little bit. We tend to characterize things that we don't like and then fight against them, but we're fighting against the caricature and not the real thing. And I'm wondering if that isn't part of what we're doing now. Well, thank you very much, folks. It seems like our time is up. Oh, excuse me, I'm reading my watch wrong. We've got 7 minutes.
John, one of the things I was thinking about Because, I've heard, actually, I was listening to Fox News the one day and they had a whole big discussion about your equality versus, what was the other
Equity.
argument?
Equity.
Equity that you were making. And I've heard equity and equality used interchangeably when people are defending critical race theory, and then conservatives tend to make a difference between them. One of the things, I've noticed that was a big concern with parents who have been going to school board meetings and arguing and so forth, is they feel as though their children are being made to feel guilty and for their views and for views in the past. And I'm not sure that that's the intent of critical race theory. I don't doubt but what there are areas of the country where some of these ideas, the ones that I had mentioned, are being proposed and are be taking to a ludicrous extent, where you're telling a first grader that, things that are meant to make them feel guilty. And I think there is concern for that, but to lump the entire movement into this idea that it is communist, which I've heard a great many times, that it is unpatriotic, to say that it is going against the white race, and that it is being defamatory towards our country, is taking it to an illogical conclusion. And not that I agree with everything that's being done, but I think it's something to listen to and just to not throw off immediately.
Well, I think that we've got a real problem in having a discussion about this, because we all have different ideas of what different words mean.
Well, that in our own sensitivity, we may not want to think that we're doing something that's racist or not racist. And
well, I know that personally, I was and still a great admirer of the memory of Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph Abernathy and Leroy Wilkins and all of those heroes of the 60s, that they were my heroes and continue to be.
Yeah.
But the people that have now wanted to reverse everything that they stood for, it's hard for me to believe when I hear somebody like Al Sharpton talk that he really wants to sit down with white people at the table of brotherhood, like Martin Luther King talked about, or judging people by the content of their character. The things that I hear out of so-called Black leaders these days just don't resonate with that kind of a philosophy of King and Wilkins and Abernathy and all the heroes of the 60s. I think that we can't sit down at the table of brotherhood because there aren't enough people who want to. That's my feeling.
John, very, very good points. And I think you just have to recognize there's racism on both sides of this issue. And I think Sharpton, by most definitions, could be considered racist in one hand. On the other hand, a person who believes that the only way to get the pendulum from moving in this direction is to give it a hard push in the other direction. And I think that's part of the reasoning behind guys who are militant about this. I'm thinking Bobby Searle, for example, in the Black Panther movement. In the Nation of Islam, how they wanted to push back and pretty much antithetical to Martin Luther King, and you say your heroes and my heroes from the 60s. So there's some of that going on, I'm quite sure.
Mm-hmm. Ron, I'll bet you remember this. You and I were in the Presbyterian Church at the same time in the 60s. And you may remember a time that there were a number of churches that passed out fair housing pledges. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
During the worship service.
Yeah.
It just so happens that on a percentage basis, our church in Wadsworth had a whole lot more people sign fair housing pledges than any place else that we knew of. But the thing is that we don't really have a strong desire. When I think about the Black Lives Matter, there was somebody on television the other day that said, well, they discovered a way to make millions of dollars, and that they're nothing more than what do you call them? A money laundering business. And I can't see that they really contribute much other than staging riots and raising money. And they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars in a short period of time. Al Sharpton, I don't know how much money he makes, but he owes the government over $4 million in back taxes. But I think that what happened to the movement right after the Civil Rights Act of '64 was signed is that there were a lot of people decided there's some money to be made in all of this, and they changed the dialogue.
Unfortunately, though, there are those that think once that was passed in '64, it's okay, done. We've solved racism as a problem. It no longer exists, and let's not do anything more. I mean, just last year, a year before?
I plead guilty to that.
And you know, the fact that racism still exists. I mean, parts of the for voting for the Civil Rights Act was it last year, a year before, where the Supreme Court said no more racism. We can do away with this, and it was aimed at certain parts of that law were aimed at certain states in the South, which had passed years before laws against allowing Blacks to vote. Well, as soon as they said it's not a problem anymore, those states rushed to pass laws that would be restrictive to Blacks in voting.
And they certainly did.
Going on today as we speak.
Yeah.
Well, in Kentucky's a good example, but we are out of time now. That 7 minutes is up. Thank you very much, folks. Patty, did I just see a cat's tail in the corner of your picture?
No, it's probably my glasses.
Oh. I thought there was a pussy cat there.
No, I've had many cats over the years, but none now. So.
See you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.
Hey, John. Take care, everybody.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.